It's Wednesday, the 23rd of February 2022. Welcome to the Fast 5 by Fear and Greed, where we give you the top 5 business stories you need to know in just 5 minutes. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Okay, Sean, 5 stories in 5 minutes. Let's get into it. Story number 1, a massive story to begin with Europe on the brink of war now after Russian President Vladimir Putin ordered troops into eastern Ukraine after recognizing Moscow-backed separatist regions. It's triggered protests from around the globe. It's triggered turmoil in financial markets. This is a massive story.
Yes, Michael. Unfortunately, all hopes for a diplomatic solution to the crisis are now fading after Mr. Putin directed his military to enter rebel-held regions in Ukraine's Donbass border area for what he called peacekeeping operations. Now, global condemnation was swift. The US Secretary of State Antony Blinken said Mr. Putin's decision to recognize the Russian-backed Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republics as independent was a clear attack on Ukraine's sovereignty. The United Nations and European leaders condemned the action, which came after Mr. Putin, in a televised speech, accused the West of using Ukraine as a tool to destroy Russia. Our own Prime Minister Scott Morrison called on Mr. Putin to withdraw troops or risk a violent and bloody confrontation. Now, Michael, financial markets responded immediately to the news. Oil prices jumped to a 7-year high. The price of gold pushed beyond $1,900 an ounce, and the US dollar appreciated. Global share markets fell. And remember, Russia and Ukraine are major exporters of gas and wheat, and those commodities are now under pressure.
Okay, story number 2, and the local market fell 1% yesterday, which makes the Coles result jumping 3% yesterday. Pretty impressive. It happened after they reported earnings that fell slightly, but nowhere near as much as analysts feared.
Yeah, it's been a really tough time for retailers with lockdowns and trading restrictions, staff shortages due to COVID, and big supply chain issues. But Coles seems to have weathered the storm pretty well. CEO Stephen Kane said inflation pressures were present. The geopolitical tensions were a problem. The lack of migrants was also a problem. But all this is a silver lining for Coles. Higher prices for goods help the retailers' home brands outperform. And their higher margin products, that's good for Coles. About 1/3 of its sales come from home brands so far. Its goal is to get to 40%. All in all, it was a pretty good result. One fact which did come out of it, which I thought was interesting, is that customers spent up on premium products over Christmas. The big 3, rock lobsters. Remember, we couldn't export them over Christmas, so we all got to eat rock lobsters, croissants, and macaroons.
There you go, Sean. None of which, I think, featured in the Thompson household over Christmas. Must have been all at the Aylmers. Story number 3, Sean, and Victorians have been told to go back to the office from next week, which is pretty much aligning with directives from New South Wales.
Yes, Victorian Premier Daniel Andrews said work from home directives and masks in the office will end from 11:59pm this Friday. It means both Sydney and Melbourne CBDs should start filling up again from Monday. Great news. Of course, that assumes people want to be back in the office. Masks in both New South Wales and Victoria will remain mandatory in some settings, such as public transport, on planes and in hospitals and, of course, aged care facilities. Also in Queensland, the mask mandate in most indoor settings will end from next Friday. Good news all around.
Yep, sure is. Story number 4, Sean, is a bit of a continuation of a story that's been going along a fair bit this week, and the $8 billion bid for AGL Energy by billionaire Mike Cannon-Brookes and Canadian asset manager Brookfield. Every day there seems to be an update because this is the story that just keeps giving. What's the latest?
Well, AGL Energy boss Graham Hunt came out and said the takeover price was ridiculously low and the accelerated closure time for coal-fired power stations is irresponsibly fast and would cost consumers. Now, Federal Treasurer Josh Frydenberg had a bit to say about it. He said there was a long way to go and shareholders needed to approve the $8 billion bid. Of course, that's from Mike Cannon-Brookes from Atlassian and Canadian asset manager Brookfield. Once it got shareholder approval, it had to get regulatory approval, including the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission and the Foreign Investment Review Board. Methinks Treasurer Frydenberg doesn't want this one to go ahead. Mind you, Victorian Premier Daniel Andrews came out yesterday and said he backed it on the basis that it will fast-track renewable energy in Australia.
Oh, what a surprise. The federal and a state government being at odds with each other. And speaking of federal politics, Sean, story number 5 is all about the man behind those giant yellow billboards that have been popping up all over the country, and the annoying TV ads and the text messages that we're all getting spammed with. Mr. Clive Palmer.
Mr. Clive Palmer, who was due at the National Press Club yesterday. Now, every Tuesday, the National Press Club holds a lunch. It's normally televised. really important people like the Reserve Bank Governor, the Prime Minister, and Anthony Albanese, the opposition leader, turn up. Yesterday, Mr. Palmer was supposed to be there. The ABC had already said it wouldn't be broadcasting the United Australia's leader's speech. Yesterday morning, Mr. Palmer cancelled his speech, saying he was experiencing flu-like symptoms. I'm not sure whether anyone was surprised, and what came out of it, which is sort of interesting, is the fact that Mr. Palmer is not vaccinated. Once again, I don't think anyone's surprised about that either.
No, not really. All right, there we go. The top 5 business stories in 5 minutes. Thank you very much, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It's Wednesday, the 23rd of February, 2022. Remember to hit follow on the podcast, and if you like something with a bit more detail, you can find our longer daily show called Fear and Greed on your podcast platform. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was the Fast 5 by Fear and Greed. Have a great day.